Hello everyone, welcome back. This is part 15 of the project, and this is where we start at. We're gonna start adding the materials to the entire scene. To do that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with a few objects just to show you, and then the following ones I'm gonna speed up the video because the process is similar. So let's start with the table. That's the first object we've modeled in this project. If I switch to material preview mode, then whenever I will drag and drop a material onto it, you will see it displayed. Okay? That's one of the wood material I've made. I have another one here, which is maybe less dark. I'd like to start with this one just to show you a few things we can do. Okay, I'm gonna split my view here to have shader editor, then you can see our material here. Okay, and the first thing I want to show you is this part here. Okay, so at the moment that's the way it looks like, and if you remember, we are using the object texture coordinates, and here we've got an object input, an object selection. And so by default, when we use the object texture coordinate and we don't select an object here, this means it is using current object as a reference. But what we can do here is have another object that will act as the reference. So if I add an empty, which is now here, I'm gonna center it on the table or close by so that we can see the things better. And now let's use this as the object reference. Okay, it's calculating the shader, and we can see that there is no difference at all, just because this, the scale of this object being 111 and the scale of this object being the same, there shouldn't be any difference. But now that we have this object, usually wood, what it does is it's usually looking more stretch. So what we can do is scale on the x-axis subject. So this way it will scale the texture on the object. Okay, and so I can have something that is looking a bit more like wood pattern, and I can also move the object so that I can select the place where it's looking much better, and this way we can have the pattern exactly the way we want. Like it's looking much better like this than what it looks like before. And so now that we've done this, remember, if we move the table now, look at this, the texture stays the same and it's looking like it's drifting or shifting on the table. So this object should always now follow the table. For that, select the object, then select the table so that the table is the active object in bright orange color, and then go to object and select parent and choose object. Okay, this means that now if I were to move the table, the empty that I'm gonna rename empty table, okay, moves with it, so the texture on the table stay the same, look the same. And now, because you know how to navigate, I assume you know how to navigate your way around the shader, what I'd like to do is having a table maybe with less dark areas. So dark areas are controlled by these sliders. So I'm gonna make it a bit lighter, okay, this way. And maybe, because it's a dining table, I assume as well that this is like cleaned and polished a lot of times, so you wouldn't have that much detail, meaning the surface will be much more flat than this. So what controls this is the normals and those two pump nodes. What I can do here now is maybe to reduce the strength of one of them or maybe both of them, so that the table is looking more or less detailed, you know. Okay, and this might be maybe the kind of look we want. Okay, knowing that now we can change the aspect of it, the scale or the stretching of it, and we can also change the colors if we want to. Okay, I can make maybe this a little bit brighter and maybe this as well, just slightly, that the table will look more like this. Okay, you could also change here the factors that drives the third color, which is even brighter, and make it maybe less noticeable, something like that. And we've got also a last one, which was about the scratches. Maybe you want to see less of them, then you can remove them almost completely using the slider. Okay, I'm gonna change again this color. I think it's better if it's a bit darker. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay, and maybe change that as well. Okay, now we've got our table materials, okay, which is set correctly. What I'm gonna do now, and I shouldn't forget that, remember this is the asset library, and here at the top we've got another option, append reuse data, and the two other options are link or just append. Link, that means that the object in your scene will be linked to the object in the asset library, so both modification will affect both objects, and that's not what we want. Append and reuse data means that if we modify an object here in the scene, it will locally modify the original material if we don't rename it after. If I were to affect this material to another object, it will look like this. Okay, and that I don't want as well, so I'm gonna use append, and append just makes a copy of the object or the materials in your scene. So I'm gonna change the material name here, so this, look at this, doesn't change, so that's perfect now. What I'm doing here with the material won't affect the material from the asset library. And now that we have this table which looks correct to me, what I can do is, what I have in mind is that I'm gonna have something like only two kinds of wood, one for the furniture and another one for the structural wood of the workshop. Okay, so maybe I should change this name to furniture. Okay. And then we use it on other objects, like for example, the chairs. I'm gonna do an example here on this chair. Okay, I have no slots, no material slot now, but I can either click on the plus here to add a slot, or if I select one of the material here, it will create a first slot. So I can have this, the wood furniture, okay? Why not? And in the reference, this part of the object were velvet. So I can add a second slot, and then I could choose the velvet, but it's not in the list yet because it's in my asset library, but it's not in the scene. So what I can do is affecting here the velvet to the entire chair, and then in here select again velvet and change that to wood furniture. And to choose which area is which material, what you can do is going into edit mode, select the part of the object that you want another material assigned to it, and then in this list, if you want to assign the velvet material, have it selected and click on assign. This way, now, this part of the object have the velvet material assigned. At the moment it's looking okay, but remember that this wood material, okay, if you click on it here, still use the empty that we have with the table. So we could either just say, okay, the material looks okay, I'm leaving it like that, or create a copy of it using this button and then change the empty that will drive the direction or the orientation or the stretching of the texture. At the moment it's looking okay, so I'm not gonna change it, but we'll see if that works with all of the chairs, because remember, as the empty is not connected to the chairs, if I am to move the chair, you can see that the texture is sliding on the object, and that's not something we want. Okay, so because this has two modifications, I'm gonna select all the chairs and I'm gonna show you something. Okay, isolate them. What I did on this chair is assign two materials, okay, the wood and the velvet. What's happening here is that if I transfer the materials from this chair to this chair will have the materials, of course, the materials list, but it wouldn't inherit the change in the material assignment. So to have object transfer materials, you can select all the objects that you want the material transferred to, and then have the active object being the one that has the materials you want to transfer from, and then click on your keyboard on Ctrl plus the L key, and then you can choose link materials. And you can see at the moment they are only just wood because they don't have the fact that this area and this area have the second material assigned. What you can do to make it happen is using again Ctrl L and then choose link object data. That way this will work, but be careful. Now if I were to change something here, make it like wood for example, all the other chairs will inherit this modification. Okay, if you do that. So you can either do it by hand, one chair at a time, or do it like that, and know that one modification on one chair will affect all the other, because now they share the same object data. Let's assign it back, and something which is still good with the fact that it uses an empty as a base and not each object is that every chair has a different wood pattern. If you look at this here, it's different than the wood pattern that we have here, and so on. Okay? So, we've done this. The last thing I'm gonna do is showing you how I'm doing it on this chandelier, because there's something else we haven't seen with this part here. Looks cool. Okay. First of all, what I'm gonna do is drag onto this object the 3 materials, or the 4 materials I want to use. I want to use a metal material. Okay, now you can see it here in the first slot. I'm gonna use the second slot and drag the wood material. Okay, that doesn't work, but that's not important. Let's add the metal here. We are looking for wax material and then the wick material. Okay, so let's select the wax here and then the wick here. Okay, so now we have basically the same problem. Oh, let's change that to wood. Oh no, it's supposed to be wood furniture here. So for the next parts, let's assign each material to each part of the object. To select the object, like the entirety of the object, you can also use on your keyboard the shortcut Ctrl plus the plus button on your numpad, and this will increase the selection. So, what's happening now? We've seen that the wood, how it works, it's using another empty. So let's say it's alright. Now, what we've got is the metal parts, okay? And maybe the metallic part will need to use another empty to drive its look. So I'm gonna use one and drag it here almost in the middle of my chandelier. I will make the chandelier parent of this empty now that I'm thinking about it. We can use the shortcut Ctrl P. Okay, that's what I'm using. And now let's have a look at the metal shader and change this and select as an object the empty. Again, because the empty has a scale of 1, 1, 1, it doesn't change anything, but I think I'd like to have something a bit smaller like that, and something I can do with my metal material is maybe improve it by adding something here in the normals. So we've got our metal parts, and now let's modify the wax material. And this time, what I'm gonna do, because having an empty, it's okay if you want to control the place. What we see here is the blue area. And why do we see this? Because remember, we are using the generated texture coordinate, meaning that it's taking the entirety of this object size to drive what we had at the beginning, which was our gradient, and we don't want that. What we can do simply here is adding a cube, okay, and assign to this cube this wax material. I'm gonna change it to wax chandelier just in case, and now we can see that if we drive now on this shader with an object which is gonna be this cube, now whatever I'm doing with this cube will be repercuted on the candles because they are using the same material. And you can see that now what I see in the cube, if I move it here, for example, is exactly what we have here on the candle. So now I can better see what I'm doing. If I want more blue or more orange, I can just move the cube wherever I want, and this is looking okay. I think I'm just gonna place it much further up. Okay, I could do that like this. If I want less blue, I think that's okay. And what I can do here as well is drive our wick material the same way, because we were using the same generated coordinate than the wax material. Let's connect this here. Let's select our cube and see now this is just the way we intended it to be. Okay, this cube here, I'm gonna set it and call it cube wax and wick at, for example, so I can remember it. I will make sure it doesn't appear in the render. Okay, I can even hide it and then place it in the helper collection. So something I forgot, that's really important, but I forgot, is to go, let's say, select the cube again, and then make it a child of the chandelier, of course. Okay, so now we got a chandelier, and if we move it, you've seen what's happening. Nothing really changed because they are using something that are children of this object, except the wood. And because of the, we need in the animation the chandelier to move, we would need to get another empty for the wood here. Maybe we could even use the original empty to drive the wood like that. I think that's alright. Okay, that's perfect. So you've seen the general workflow I use now to assign materials to every object. So now I'm going to speed up the video to do all the other objects, just almost the same way. Okay. Okay, so we've managed to do most of the objects. Okay, and now we have left the plant and the books. And we've got our book, but we don't want every book to look the same. So let's do something. Let's do something that's new. I haven't shown you before. You can use here as an input the object info node, and on this node you've got a random output. This will just output a random number between 0 to 1 depending on the object, and every object will have a different output. So what we can do here, instead of having this color in an RGB node, is having a color ramp instead. And this color ramp, let's do it like this. I'm gonna sample this color here and then add a few other colors that are supposed to be book colors. I'm gonna change this setup from linear to constant so that we won't have like in between colors, and maybe we can have, let's say, something like a dark blue color for the books. I can see red books as well. Let's make it dark also, and something like that. So now we are driving this output from the random object info, and this will be our first color to replace this in here. Okay, so I'm just gonna unplug this and plug that instead, and because we've got two colors, that would be good to have the two colors like that, driven like that. This is a bit brighter than the other one, so I'm just gonna brighten all the colors so that we will have the same kind of gradients on both sides. Okay, this, and I'm just gonna unplug this and plug this here instead. Those are just in case. And because the output here is the same, if it's the brown color that is outputted, over here it's going to be the brighter brown color. And now we can see this book is supposed to be white. Let's go out of the local view, and I remember I have like an entire collection of books, so I'm going to select them all, do like this. This is the active object. You can see it already has the material, so I'm going to just use Ctrl L and link materials, and here you can see that randomly the books have white, brown or red colors. I'm not sure about the white color, it looks a bit too not colored for me. We could have maybe some kind of dark screen color instead. I think I'm gonna try that and see if that works. I'm sure about it. Let's desaturate it a lot like that. And do it as well here. Okay, that would work. So now we've got a random color for all our books, and this is our bookshelf now. Okay, so let's do it. We get pots material, and this I'm gonna use the same kind of things we've used so far, meaning a noise that drives two colors. Usually, as I told you, I would use UV in the UVs because this allows us to really tweak the coordinates the way we want. What I can try to do without having to show you too much new things, because maybe it's gonna be, as I said, too much, is doing a bit of it, but not too much. Oh my god, the way I'm talking, it's incredible. Okay, so now we've got our gradients. What we can try to do is selecting the teeth like that, aligning the view almost straight to it, and using the U key, it's the equivalent of opening this menu here, and select project from view. What I can do, simply go to the UV editor, select all that, and then move it or rotate it to where I need it to. Okay, so I'm gonna just move it this way. Okay, and now in the shader editor, this will work as intended. Okay, and I can do this for all the teeth. Okay, that's gonna be a long process. As you can see, it's you have to do it manually, but it gives you most control over how things are displayed on an object. Okay, I use the vector type and now it's modifying the thing correctly. I'm gonna have to do, of course, the leaves before calling it done, but don't worry, I'm gonna tackle that very soon. All the objects are textured and well. Now what we need to work on will be the structure and the stones and the chimney. All those guys. Okay? What I would like to do is having tiles, but like the books, having them have different colors. There is something we need to look at. Look at the pattern you can see here. It's the same on every single tile. That is because we use for all of them the objects texture coordinates, and all of them have the same origin. Okay? What I'm gonna do here is change the origin geometry so they all have one in the middle. That doesn't gonna change anything in the pattern repeating. So what I could do here is use for certain things an empty again as the driver for the pattern. So that this means that every tile will have a different pattern because it will go across all of them from just one single point. So we've got our floor. What I want to do now I use this for the books as well. It selects all of my tiles like this, remove this from the selection, and then apply a random transformation. So I use F3 on my keyboard, select again randomize transform, and I'm gonna randomize their rotation, especially the rotation, just slightly, just a few degrees. And now we've got to work on the walls and the stones. I want to do some kind of plaster effect. Okay, and this below the stones, I think it should be a bit, maybe a bit slightly different, to have like a kind of gradient again. What I'm gonna do now is the stones materials. What I'd like to add are some kind of again spots, color spots. And now let's add our bump nodes. White is what goes out, so this is reversed. What we want is something inverted. So I'm gonna use in the color group the invert node. And now I think we are officially done with everything, but no, there is the chimney. We haven't done the chimney. We might need to use an empty to drive the walls. I can use one for the chimney, but I can use also one for all of the objects. And I think that's gonna be a bit better. Doesn't look like wood, okay? Like it's not stretched, so I'm gonna just do that. What we have, if I were to use like an object, I would have to use, like I did for the wood parts on the chimney, one empty for each of them, so that would not work. But so what I'm gonna do is stretch the first noise textures, Okay, so we finished all of the texturing. Now the idea is, of course, to add light to the project to make it look nice, because this is like okay, but there isn't any walls and ceiling. If we close the space, of course, I have a light in here somewhere, in here, that's casting the light here, but of course it's still not too bright, so I think that's gonna be our exercise for the next part. So I hope you like these parts. It was something really long, but when you adjust the details, it's always taking a long time. There is nothing we can do about it. But at the same time, because we know and we master all these elements much better each time we create a project or we create something, like if we create an object, we are getting better at modeling, and if we create materials, we are getting better at creating them. Of course, at the end, we are getting better and so again faster at all of that. But keep in mind that even the best of the best can't do this in 1 second. What takes time, and you have to take it. There is no shortcuts after a certain point. Like creating an object, you can be as fast as you want. It will take a minimum amount of time. And if you want to do something good, at least good, you need to take the time to do it. So that was the wisdom part of this lesson. I hope to see you next time for the lighting. In the meantime, good luck on creating all those shaders and all. I know I've been going a bit fast, but hopefully you will manage it. And in case you don't hesitate to ask me any questions in the comments, and I'll be glad to answer all of them. Okay. So have a good evening, have a good time, have a good life, and be creative. Take care, everyone. Bye.